All right, we're here to talk about Sencha Touch. Hopefully you're in the right place. My name is Dave Kaneda. That is an awesome cartoon of me. So I wrote about 3 years ago, I wrote a plugin called JQ Touch for jQuery. It's a plugin that sort of allows you to create web pages that feel a little bit more like iPhone apps or mobile apps. About 1.5 years ago, I moved over to Sencha, and we started to kind of redo the same thing, but based on a JavaScript API and way, way more powerful. So that's my Twitter handle. That's the company's Twitter handle. If you have any questions, if I go too fast, I am going to rush. Just shoot me a question on Twitter, and I'll try to answer it. And full speed ahead. So Sencha Touch is a free JavaScript framework for building rich mobile apps. We are an object-oriented framework, so we use the classical inheritance model. We have things like MVC, we have things like data. I'll talk more about those in a little bit. But first, I think it's important that you just sort of get an idea of what it can do. So that being said, I'm going to show a couple apps. This first one is Travelmate. So again, this is a web app. This is built with JavaScript. You can see things we have things like a carousel. This one's a little translation tool. We have these sort of pickers. And again, that's all being done just in a web app. This next one is the schedule for a conference I just went to a couple weeks ago in Dallas, the Breaking Development Conference. Anyone there? Anyone go there? Yeah! I know you. You can see we're adding it to the home screen. We get a custom icon. And when we launch it again, no browser bar, custom startup screen. And it feels like a real native app. Right? We have things like the A to Z controller on the right. We have the grouped headers in the list. Pull in some tweets. Custom messaging. Little map component. I really like how recently they added the ability within the Google Maps so that you can actually do the street view directly in it, and it works great within the framework. Right? That's pretty cool, right? And some basic pages, whatever. And then this last one is called Irresistible. This is done by a friend of mine, Nick. He's sitting over there. This is for a food delivery service in the UK. Nick built this, I should have asked beforehand, but I think it took him about a week. And I think he said within the first weekend, it basically paid for the entire time he spent developing the app because so many people used it. Blah, blah, blah. Awesome little CSS animation done with our CSS animator tool. But we're here to talk about Sencha Touch. So, and this is something new. So I wanted to try, everybody's just going to be on their laptops the entire time, I figure anyway, so you might as well be checking out our stuff while you do it. This is for our kitchen sink demo. This just is sort of like a big combination of all our demos, has some data features in there, but mostly shows off all the UI. So go ahead and pull it up. It's got to be in a WebKit-based browser. So open up Chrome, check it out, j.mp/touchsync. So the reason I think Sencha Touch is cool is details matter. This was something Brian Fling, a friend of mine, said in Dallas a couple weeks ago. And I think it's true. I think in terms of UX, in terms of usability, when you're looking at mobile apps, the details, the way somebody interacts with the app is important. For example, that Travelmate app, when you have two pickers side by side when you're converting languages, that's the best way, really, to show off or to get the user to switch to languages, right? That would be a lot harder to do and a lot less pleasant to do with two select elements. Just the microseconds matter to a user. And that being said, I think Sencha Touch is sort of the sweet spot in mobile web app design between web and native. So there are benefits to doing things natively. You have all of your UI, all of your app sort of on the device, and all you're doing is requesting data. That's a really nice thing to do. That speeds stuff up a lot for your users. Everybody here, I assume, knows the benefits of web development. Better debugging, lots of developers, they're cheaper, it's fast, it's awesome, it's cross-platform. I don't have to sell you guys on web, right? You guys like the web, I hope. Devices, we support iOS. The only thing I want to point out is that we do support the iPad really well, which is something some other sort of players in this field don't do at the moment. We have a very rich layout system, and it looks awesome on the iPad. The iPad 2 is insanely awesome, blazing fast. I can give a demo later if somebody wants. Then there's the bajillion Androids. We support all those, the tablet, again, and the same thing with BlackBerry, tablet. All these things are just WebKit. So basically, we're saying we support WebKit on mobile. I think we are getting ready to start looking at Touch 2.0, and hopefully we will look at some extra platforms and things like that, but I can't talk about that now. So what you get. And this would be a good time to open up that sync demo and just sort of play along, because these are the dry slide portion. Touch events. So at the very core of what we do, sort of one of the base layers is abstract all of the touch events on the device. By default, you get 4 touch events: touch start, touch end, touch move, and touch cancel. We go a step further than that. We abstract them all to the document so that they're performant, so you're not binding touch events to every list item or things like that. It's all handled in the background for you when you bind an event our way. And in doing so, we actually get to add in a whole bunch of sort of more sensible default events. So you get things like tap, double tap, pinch, rotate, stuff like that, stuff that makes sense, stuff you want to bind to. The next thing we do on top of the touch event is our own scrolling layer. How many people know what I'm talking about when I say fake scrolling on iOS mobile Safari? That is awesome. This crowd rocks. All right, so I'm just going to show it then, because you guys know what I'm talking about. It's so smooth, right? Buttery smooth. We've spent months simply on this scroll, both in getting the right momentum, the right physics, and then actually making that performant on things like Android and BlackBerry, which if you go out to do on your own, good luck. Then we have a whole lot of components. I won't bore you with the whole list, but you guys can read. And again, play along, j.mp/touchsync. You can try them all out in Chrome, or if you even have the, some sort of emulator, throw them in that. Try it out. On the theming side of things, this is sort of my contribution, my brainchild to the framework. This is my favorite part. All of our themes are, first of all, of course, based on CSS3 because we're targeting WebKit, so you get all of the awesome gradients, text shadows, box shadows, etc. But then we've actually taken it a step further and abstracted that with Sass and Compass. So basically, Sass and Compass give you the ability to use things like variables and mixins within your CSS, and we've created a whole framework on top of that system, including our own mixins, our own variables, so you can actually take the default sencha touch theme and change it pretty incredibly on the fly. And hopefully, if we have time, I will get to show that off. The other important thing to note is we include a ton of icons by default. Icons are important on mobile. You can optionally include them all in your app. They all come in base64 encoded into your CSS, which is great for latency on mobile. And then the last thing I want to mention is they're all resolution independent. So one big goal we've had from the beginning of our theme is trying to get it so that a button is the same physical size, regardless of the PPI of the device, across all the devices, which is a challenge. So then this is something the more techie audience might appreciate. We do include a full data package with sencha touch as well as our desktop counterpart, XJS. This gives you things on the client side like an ORM, like client-side associations. You get validations, field validations, And then we have a whole bunch of data stores, data proxies, et cetera, that make it really easy to work with any sort of API endpoint, XML, REST, JSON, whatever you want. And then we also actually have a proxy set up specifically for offline storage, so you can easily take some data you get online and take it offline. And that being said, all of that sort of comes together into a full application architecture, which is something that not a lot of frameworks nowadays offer. We include things like MVC, we include data, we include the theming as you saw. Some others I didn't get to mention are history support, device detection, orientation events. This has just kind of become a catch-all for just random things I don't talk about. Layout system, animations, etc. At any rate, I encourage you to play around with it. That being said, we're a very rich framework. We have a lot of features, a lot of functionality. So it's important to note we have a lot of sort of support venues for you. We have the API docs, which are getting an improvement very soon. Little makeover. You can check them out in XJS4. And then we have forums that are super active. We have over 200,000 active members of our forums. And we have a Learn section, which with a bunch of tutorials, getting started guides, all that kind of stuff. And that's actually getting a makeover soon as well, I hope. And then lastly, once you create your awesome web app with Sencha Touch, how do you distribute it? Like you saw in some of the preview movies, you can just distribute it in the browser. Works great. You may want to wrap it up in something like PhoneGap if you want device access, or you want to put it on the App Store, the Android Marketplace, BlackBerry App World, I think it's called. So yeah, PhoneGap rocks, highly recommended. Works great with Sencha Touch. And then lastly, just sort of looking ahead to the future, some of the things we're going to bring in Touch 2.0. We're still discussing features. So this isn't exactly the feature list of what's coming in Touch 2.0. This is just sort of the hard set minimum. We know what we're bringing in. We're going to improve the MVC system a lot. We are implementing a new build system which will automatically create an optimized JavaScript file, an optimized build for your app by literally launching your app in the background, seeing its dependencies, and then automatically creating one minified JavaScript file for you of your app and taking out everything you don't use. That is awesome. I'm just throwing that out there now. Charting extension, which is sort of based off of our desktop charting that we're doing right now. A dynamic loading system, which sort of goes along with the optimized builds, and improved history support. The one more thing referenced at the bottom of the slide is our GUI. And I apologize, this is a little butt ugly right now, but this is way alpha prototype. We are working on a drag and drop system to put together your views, which will be awesome. How's this rate going for everyone? Too fast, too slow? I think it's good, yeah? Should have had an extra shot of coffee before I came up, saved 2 minutes. But I think this is going to be really sweet once we get this thing together. So, sort of the concluding slides. If you like some of this stuff and you find it interesting, you like sort of recreating native interfaces with web tech, come talk to me because we are hiring and like crazy. We are growing an insane amount. I think I joined about 1.5 years ago, not even. I was the 8th person on the team, and I think just last week we did a recount. We've just hit 60. So come on board. We'll take you. All right, so that's pretty much it. Again, our website, sencha.com, my Twitter name. I'm not done yet, though. I am going to show you guys some code, because we actually did that in 14 minutes and 24 seconds. Round of applause for the time. Come on. Yeah. That's usually an hour presentation. Just throwing that out there. You're like, thank God, because I couldn't sit through that for an hour. All right, I'm going to go back to the mirror. destroyed my desktop. Lame. Shh, Twitter, shh. Nobody at reply me right now. Okay. It's okay, you can keep them coming. All right, so this is an app I did with O'Reilly conferences, for their conferences. Schedule app, you'll kind of recognize the one we showed earlier, that orange one, the Breaking Dev one. They kind of pirate patched this one. So again, you know, we have a list. You can see I'm running it right in Chrome right now. I have to do the whole drag to scroll thing, but other than that, it's pretty awesome. Right, cool app, cool app. All right, you guys have seen it, you're bored. So let's look at code. Is that readable? Good, awesome. Well, first, I'm just gonna sort of quickly look at this class for this app. Keep in mind, this whole app, this whole conference app, which you saw is pretty rich, has a tab bar, has tweets, brings in data, all this kind of stuff. It's about 600 lines of this JavaScript that looks like this. Which is pretty short for such a full app. So just to give you guys some idea, you can see we are creating an object called a session list, which extends a basic panel, ext.panel. We throw it some config options like the layout, card, some custom options I threw in there. Then within that panel, we throw a list, which we just create a new ext.list. Again, give it some config options. We have a quick inline template for each of the rows in that list for each session. And basically, all we do is set up a data store against a model. And I'll show you real quick. Those models are wacky easy. And if any of my colleagues saw me putting all of my models in one class, I would totally get yelled at. But, or in one file, rather, sorry. But anyway, there's my proposal model. You can see it has the association with speakers. And then I just sort of say what the fields are going to be. I then pass that model into the data store, say that we're going to sort it by time. The group string is going to be a pretty time variable on that data. And then the proxy is basically just a JSON one, we could say script tag. Coming from this API endpoint, we're not going to cache it. That's for my own purposes. I think I was debugging something. And the root node is proposals. And then after that, it basically looks at that JSON, goes to the proposals node, looks at that array, grabs all those objects, matches up the objects in there, sorry, the attributes in there against this template, and then creates that list. It's pretty simple, right? Louder? No, I don't care. So we have a selection change event when you tap on a list item. So this is cool. When you click one of those dates at the top, so we have these guys, right? All we're really doing, you know, in the sort of jQuery mentality, and totally not bashing jQuery, I love them, but you know, you would be, when you click one of those dates, you would be clearing a DOM list. You would be saying, grab this UL, clear the DOM, you know, go through my JSON, re-inject it this way. Here, dealing with sort of an app architecture, dealing with data stores, data models, et cetera, you can see we're really simply just clearing a filter on the data store that's bound to that list, and then refiltering it on the date from that button, which is way simpler, right? All about UI binding. And then I scroll to the top just because I'm a sucker for details. So does that look cool to everybody? Does that kind of make sense? That's kind of all I'm gonna, that was not nearly strong enough a reaction to the cool part. Come on, no. As long as you get it. And hopefully I can squeeze in like a few questions. Just real quick, I'm gonna show off the theming system. So this is what the theme for this app looks like. You can tell it is a little custom. We have kind of like a pink thing going on right now. Let's say we didn't want it to be pink. Next year we're remaking this app for the next conference, but The next app is actually green. We could just throw that in there. This is actually getting compiled behind the scenes with SAS. Oh, no, it's not. So I can just run compass watch that, the folder where that file is living. It's going to take a look at it, recompile the CSS with that new color change. And now everything's green, right? So we have about 50 to 60 variables in touch. You can see even the selected state is green, back button's green. It's sort of taken over every possible place it could. Again, with about 50 to 60 variables, you can get a lot more granular with your control. I'm just changing base color because it is the most sweeping change. It's the most noticeable. Some other sort of big ones are, we could say the overall base gradient is glossy. Right? Make sure that fires. And now everything's glossy. You guys see that? And as I mentioned, we can get a lot more granular. So let's say we just want the tab bar at the bottom to be glossy, get a little more iOS feeling. Oh, I guess it only does the tabs. It's still cool. So that's it. Do we have some time for questions? Yeah? I'm going to say yes. That would be difficult. The question was, you know, is the scroller component sort of separated enough that you could be used outside the framework? Not in the same way things like Glovebox and, you know, touch scroll or iScroll, whatever. It's not as componentized as that. It does use some of our other classes. Hypothetically, if we get the build system to the point where we want it to be, fine then, don't show the thank you slide. Oh, did I kick it? Then hopefully that will be possible at a certain point. Yeah, that's a good question. So the question is it really free? Yeah, it's free. So basically, just to sort of explain it a little bit, we do have a commercial license and a GPL license. They're both free. Sounds wacky, I know. But basically, we do it so that you can't create a tool that creates other sencha touch apps and then distribute that and sell that and all that kind of stuff. But in general, if you just want to use it to like get, you know, you have 5 apps that you want to put on the App Store or the Android Marketplace, go for it, free. If you are a school or a nonprofit or you're doing something open source, you do the GPL way, still free. So yeah, totally free. We do have paid support options, stuff like that. But really, the company rests a lot more on the XJS side for the commercial licenses. Touch is just open. We figure it's a lot more consumer-centric, so we just kind of want to get it out there. All right, so I know I'm holding up the next guy. Thank you guys a ton. Find me afterwards. Okay, bye. Thanks.